Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the meeting of the Risk and Assurance Committee of the Council. Special welcome to members of the public who are with us either online or in the meeting room, and other guests. Councillor McPhail has kindly offered to open the meeting.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the opportunity to gather and serve our community. Grant us wisdom, understanding and integrity as we consider the matters before us today. Help us to listen respectfully, work together constructively and make decisions that promote the well-being of all. Bless our discussions and guide our actions for the common good. Amen.
Thank you, Councillor McPhail. Just an important meeting this morning. I thought I'd mention a few small things as we get underway. The committee, of course, is an oversight committee focused on two parts of Council's job. One is risk and one is assurance. We're not decision makers this morning, so we're here as part of a good governance process. And we've got a bunch of things on the agenda to work through in that light. A couple of administrative items I just need to mention. The minutes of our committee's last meeting are actually going to come to us next time. They're not in the packet, so we'll deal with those next time. And also, I want to thank some of the committee members who did send me emails with a heads up on their questions. That was really helpful for me for planning the timing. I'm also, just as an independent member of the committee, wanted to mention that I have watched the extraordinary meeting that you had last week, and just to get myself up to speed, if you like, with the topics that Council is handling. So let's see whether the committee today can add some value and give some support to everyone who's juggling a lot at the moment. Now, I'm going to move on to the apologies. I've got an apology from Councillor Fraser, and I've also got, I think, Councillor Stringer online. Is that right? No. Oh, he is. Camera seems to be off, but welcome to the meeting. Declarations of interest, item 3 in the agenda. Does anyone have a conflict of interest to mention? Checking online. Thank you. Any member of the committee, please do help me if Councillor Stringer has his hand up, because it's not easy for me to see that. All right, so if that would take, there's no declarations of conflicts, we'll move on to item number 4. And as we did last time, I'm going to try and use the page references in the packet. So this, if I'm talking about a page number, it's from the packet of information that was shared online, so anybody can refer to those. So we've got the first decision for the committee, which is to consider the procurement policy for a recommendation to Council. So it's not we don't approve it. So I'll just take the paper as read. Councillor Cupid, I think you had a small item you wanted to mention just about the wording of the paper.
Yeah, just that it says that the recommendation is that the Council receives notes, Should that not be that the committee does that?
Yes, I think there's just been some small administrative things, and this occurs several times in the papers, so management will just comment on that as we go through, but not a criticism, just a thing. Thank you very much for paying attention to the detail. So in each case in the papers where it says Council does something, it'll be that the committee does it. Thank you very much. All right, so can I open it up then for conversation on the procurement policy?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I did have a question that Andy sent through prior to the apologies, just around point 8.2. It mentions the different ones being like builders, tradies, roofers. He did ask around, say, carpenters, joiners, cabinet makers. Should we seek some clarity in there to include those, because they don't technically fall under builders? They are their own workforce, or is there an update of the wording needed just to avoid any issues there?
staff can update the policy to say and the like, so it incorporates other external trades as well.
Any other questions? Or suggestions? Go ahead, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So the other thing I was wondering around the tender threshold being increased from 10 to 25, is there going to be a risk of us reducing our competitive tension for those low to mid-range jobs by doing that? And how do you feel that that fits with supporting our buy local ethos by doing so?
Good morning all. For those who you have not met me, my name is Rowena Owens and I'm the new Project Management Officer, so it's good to see you all. In regards to that question, why we've upped the threshold is because we have looked at a lot of the CapEx spending that we're doing, and anything under the 25,000 we don't consider as high risk as such. Why we have upped it is because we're trying to get more in the approved contractor and supplier panel, which will cater and filter for the exact issue that will concern that you've got. So we're hoping that will fix that.
Any other observations, questions? No. So, look, I will just, with the committee's agreement, add an observation of my own that I feel that the increase is appropriate and prudent. It's probably sitting at the 10,000, which is a very low threshold compared with your overall operating expenses, getting a few nods around the committee. So I would certainly support the change in policy in relation to their value. And in terms of the breadth, good point. And I think it's, again, appropriate to extend very significant spend probably. So that's my view, if it's helpful to management. All right, do I have a mover for the motion as amended with the change in the extension of definition of tradies? Thank you, Councillor Gardine and Councillor McDonnell. Thank you. All in agreement? Thank you. And that's passed, and we'll move to the next agenda item. And welcome to the team, Ms. Owen. All right, so similar decision to make on recommending an updated disposal of assets policy to council. I'll just take the paper as read. I don't think there's the same amendment to note in relation to this paper. So any questions, suggestions or observations from members of the committee? Any observations, anything extra from management? All right, may I have a mover and a seconder for this decision, please? Thank you, Councillor Smith and Coopert. All in favour? Thank you, that motion is passed. So those are the two decisions. They might seem straightforward, but I know a lot of work has gone into them, so thank you, management, for the continued effort to review and update policies. It's not always a fun job, but it's an important part of the management function. Thank you. We'll move on to section 5 of the agenda, which is reports for discussion. I'd like to welcome our auditor, Mike, Hawken. I was getting myself confused because I did know Mike Hawker, and I was thinking, that's not right. So welcome, please come to the table, Mike, from Deloitte. And I'd like to express the committee's appreciation for you attending in person. It is a commitment that we value. Thank you. Now, in order to speak, you're going to need to turn your microphone on when I turn mine off. So here's my green light.
Right, would you like me just to sort of cover our report? Look, firstly, thanks for the opportunity to come and address the committee. It's a pleasure to be here in person. I think it helps engage with the committee and provide the opportunity for people to challenge and ask questions of the audit process. Look, I think we've sort of started our thinking and planning for the 30 June 2026 audit. I think that could be a bit of a precursor to a challenging sort of 12 months for management, because off the back of that we will have some changes in relation to water reforms and long-term plans that we'll need to work through. So hopefully we can work our way through the 30 June 2026 annual report process reasonably smoothly, but notwithstanding that, there's always some things that we need to do and challenges that we'll need to work through. So just in terms of our report, I will take it as read, but I'll perhaps just make a couple of comments and observations on the way through. We've set out what we think are the areas of audit focus that we'll need to provide some focus and attention to through the audit process. One of the opportunities, I think, in these meetings, and it's important to get feedback from the committee as to anything else that the committee may see as being relevant for the current year audit. So there will be an opportunity to give some feedback as well, because I'm keen to hear from the committee. But of course, some of those areas, as you would expect, I think, rates is obviously a large area of focus for us. As much about legislative compliance as it is about the actual numbers, which the mechanics of that are reasonably sort of straightforward, but there is a legislative compliance piece that we do look at as part of our work. Statement of service performance, and I guess for those that are relatively new, it's important to understand there's sort of two parts to our audit. One is the traditional financial statement audit, and that's what people are more familiar with. In local government, we also have the audit of the statement of service performance, and so that's where we provide an opinion on those performance measures that council included in their long-term plan and then report back against to the community. So we do an audit of those performance measures in addition to the traditional financial statement work that we do. This year we haven't got a valuation, so we will be rolling forward the previous valuation that was done by council. That doesn't mean that we don't have to look at that valuation for roading and infrastructure or Three Waters infrastructure. We still have to look at that and consider any material changes that might have occurred in the last 12 months and whether that might have had an impact on the carrying value of those assets. So while we don't have a valuation, there is still work that we do with management in relation to that assessment. As I mentioned at the start, there's a lot going on in terms of government reforms, some of which is sort of peripheral noise from an audit process, but I'm sure from a committee perspective and a council perspective is top of mind. But, we will need to sort of think through things like, the water reforms. We understand 1 July 2027, those water assets will transfer across to the new water entity. There will be disclosures that are required in the annual report to reflect that. And of course, there's ongoing discussions around amalgamation, around other aspects of local government that I'm sure are occupying minds. But we will need to keep on top of any sort of changes and legislative changes that might occur between now and when we approve those financial statements. As I say, I think the annual report will be reasonably straightforward in that regard. The LTP might be a little bit more challenging, I think, but we'll worry about that when we get to it. And so coming across there, that sort of covers off, I think, those areas of audit focus. And maybe if I just pause there and offer the committee the opportunity to ask me of any questions that they might have on those areas of audit focus.
Thank you very much. And I think that's a good time to pause. Just mindful that some members of the committee have been through this multiple times. Others, some of us, it's our first time. And so I would like to invite the members of the committee who have been through this before, you know who you are, to go first if you like. Anything?
Just, is this the time to look at your proposed audit fees, or is it just the... Yeah, I'll just hold fire.
Anything else? Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. You've spoken a little bit about the government reforms being the new area of focus. specifically how about the discontinuation of the water in-house and then the moving of assets. I know that's not till a bit earlier in the piece, but do we need to be provisioning for that as part of the requirement moving forward over this year, or will it actually be for next year's full audit?
Yeah, look, the substantive impact of that will be for next year. I think what you will be required to include, and look, it's an evolving area. We're talking very closely with the Audit Office, and that communication is sort of ongoing with them. I think for this year, probably the extent of the impact on your annual financial statements or annual report will be disclosure of the impending change. And that's probably quite generic because at the moment some of that detail wouldn't necessarily have been worked through. So I think at 30 June 2026, it will just be a disclosure matter. And as I say, I think it'll be sector generic rather than specific to Gore District Council.
All right. Well, look, I just have a couple of comments. I welcome your thoughts on this. As a committee, then, we need to have our eye on the ball going forward about things like notes to the accounts will need to be updated and so on. So it's something for us all to pay attention to. And the next time we see you when we're looking at the draft audit report. But for me, I think the breadth of areas of audit focus are a really good reminder to us all of how big this job is. And the load on management to look back and give assurance compared with all the work that's going on to look forward. And so I guess on behalf of the committee, just asking for that, that teamwork from us all to focus on what really matters, and to recognise the load that you'll be encouraging. Please help us be satisfied on these topics, and yet everyone's got their eye on the forward ball as well. It's a tricky situation for everyone, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I think, the next 12 months will be quite demanding, I think, of management and all of the parties that feed into that exercise. But yeah, I think if we can ring fence into particular projects, Lorne and Deb have been here, they've been through an annual report process before. To some extent, this is a rinse and repeat. We don't have a lot of other issues that are specific to Gore. I think in the last few years, there's been quite a lot of maturing of processes of dealing with sort of issues on the table. So, from an audit perspective, the 30 June should be reasonably clean, I'm anticipating. But it's really important to get that out of the way, get that done in a timely manner, and then focus on what will be inevitably a more challenging LTP, I suspect. Yeah.
All right, and then just the only other thing I wanted to mention is when we look at the areas of audit focus, you've selected only one as being a significant risk from a backwards looking point of view. And just for the committee, we've got a whole set of papers today which talks about a whole bunch of risks looking forward with our risk lens and all the work we've done to set up a good risk management matrix, if you like. So just really interested in your comments on why is that one a significant risk? Is that about Gore, or is that about generally this is an area we look at? Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question. And to be honest, that's not really reflective of Gore District Council. We are under our international auditing standards, which really are the guiding provisions of how we approach our work. There's two assumed significant risks, and that relates to revenue and this management override of controls area. We rebut the risk of revenue because rates is reasonably straightforward. It's very well legislated. There's not any real judgment in the determination of rates, so we don't consider that to be a significant risk. We keep the management override of controls in there because we're obligated to under our professional engagement standards. So that's really a reflection of what we as auditors are required to do, as opposed to anything that reflects on Gore District Council. If we had a valuation in there, we would probably have that as a significant risk, because clearly there's quite a lot of judgment that goes into the valuation exercise. the numbers involved are significant and the fluctuations often are significant. So we would have that in there if there was a valuation, but given it's a roll forward from a previous valuation, it's a more straightforward process, which is why we just consider that. Now, I should be clear, just because we don't have those other areas as significant risks, we still do work on all of those other areas. So important to just distinguish that as well.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald.
Just one comment from being an accountant that's been audited a lot. We're under, with management override here now, we're under significant less risk because Launay has 2 or 3 accountants under it, so there's a much wider spread. I operate some businesses that are audited that I am the only person who, so the chances of me manipulating things without being detected is a lot higher than if you've got multiple staff working in the same area. So that risk should be on this organisation reduced considerably now from the way I look at it.
Yes, look, I think that's a very fair comment. Within some of those smaller organisations, for all the will in the world, you can't implement controls like segregations of duties. You do have the benefit here of a team and the ability to then segregate responsibilities, have review controls, etc. So, yeah, you're absolutely right. Notwithstanding that, we are still required to keep it as a significant risk. But look, it's not one that I sit here and have any particular concern about in regard to Gore District Council. Okay. Maybe if I just sort of carry on, there's a bit of information there in the back of our report which goes to a little bit of detail about how we do our work. That may be of some interest, particularly to the new committee members. We do look at IT systems. They are an increasingly important part of any financial system, of any control environment that you have, and the ability to, utilise, I guess, those IT systems to enhance your control environment. There's also an element of that where those IT systems also feed into the information that gets reported as part of your statement of service performance. So there's a myriad of systems that are then feeding into that information that gets reported. So an important part of what we do is to look at those IT systems and where we can to think about controls associated with them, which then help drive the nature and type of work that we do on those outputs. No real developments in financial reporting this year. So, one of the good things is that while we have all of this reform going on around us, the actual underlying financial reporting standards that the committee is reporting under are reasonably stable, and they have been for a few years now. So, that is one thing that works in our favour. There's nothing there that I need to call out which will have an impact on council in relation to 30 June 2026. So that's pleasing. We have a little bit of information in there around innovation, which is really how our audit tools are evolving in the type and nature of work that we do. I guess the important thing that I want to get across to council is that data security is something that I think is really important and is topical and relevant from a committee perspective. We are very mindful of that. I think you've probably all seen a headline in the paper at some point around data being finding its way into a public arena or an inappropriate sort of arena. All of our servers are based in New Zealand. We don't send our information offshore, and we've got systems and protocols and controls around how we access data. So we do have a system called Deloitte Connect, which is how we transfer data between ourselves and council. So we tend not to even email data these days. We use that system as a protected, secure system that only Gore management and ourselves can access. So that gives a little bit of security around, some of that sensitive information and data, which I think is important that the committee understand, those controls. So that's sort of, a little bit about how we go about it. I guess just coming back to the fee, I know that's always a topic of discussion. So in the pack, we've also got a copy of our audit fee proposal. For the benefit, again, of those newer committee members, the way that this works is that we're required to get approval of our fee from two parts. One is from council itself, but there's also an approval process with the audit office. The audit office is the rebranded office of the Auditor General. So we do the audit of Gore District Council on the Auditor General's behalf. And so as part of our fee setting process, we need to submit to the Auditor General our fee proposal. They benchmark that relative to the sector. We also do the audits of, I think, 13 councils nationally. And so we benchmark our fee internally across our 13 councils, both in relation to hours and fees and hourly recovery rates. And so, yeah, this fee has been submitted to the Audit Office. They've approved it. But of course, you know, there is a process to then submit and present that to the committee and for council to approve that. So in that document, we set out our hours and our budget for the proposed fees. One of the things I should note is that our hours in 2025 were at 945 hours. We've set the budget based on 700, which was our budget for 2025. And part of the reasoning for that is to create and maintain some tension in the audit around our delivery. You know, we need to be efficient and effective in how we deliver audits. So hence, you know, while we had an extra 245 hours last year, the fee is a fixed fee, unless there are, you know, valid reasons for, you know, why that might have some additional cost consequences. But it's really keeping some tension in there that we need to be efficient and effective and work with Lornay and her team to deliver the audit as best we can for that 700 hours. And I guess our efficiency, what we're not doing is our inefficiency is not being passed on to council. So that's the logic as to why those hours and the fee might look a little bit unusual. But I'm happy to pause there and then offer the opportunity for any questions.
Do any members have questions for Mike?
Just on the estimate of estimated disbursements has gone up about 4,000. There's no explanation on that, whereas on your one there's a wage increase of 4.2% uplift of 6,487. What explain to us the estimated disbursements increase?
Yes, that's the cost of... Sorry. Yeah, so the disbursements relate to the cost of us being on site. So just for clarity, the disbursements reflect a combination of both travel and accommodation costs and per diems while our teams are out of town. You know, what we've probably found coming out of COVID was that remote working was a lot more common. It's inefficient. You know, to be quite honest, from our perspective, we are more effective and efficient when we are on site. And so what we've reflected in here is an additional week of being on site relative to where we have been last year. Part of that is that, you know, it's trying to close the gap on that 245 hours between our actual hours and where we landed last year. So I think we are generally seeing a bit of a shift from remote working back to actually interfacing with teams. It's more efficient and effective from our perspective. I think it also allows for a better audit process because we can have conversations, which is much more meaningful than, you know, transferring data across a Deloitte Connect or equivalent system.
So in fairness, we were more likely to see the 700 hours than the 945. And the
I certainly hope so from our own economics. But look, you know, that's we'll have to sort of play that out. But look, at the end of the day, you know, we have a set of standards that we need to meet. And so, you know, to be quite honest, you know, my view, and I think those of all of our partners, we're not prepared to compromise the quality of the work that we do to meet a budget. So the hours, in some ways, the hours will be the hours. And that's our problem, to try and do that in a way that, as best we can, we get near that 700. Yeah.
Thank you. Through the chair there. The AI, is it GNAI you call it there? Use of that obviously lessens the number of hours and enables your staff to do more quicker. That's what you see that improving in time as well, more and more.
Yeah, good question. And I often get this question in audit committees, because you're absolutely right. We've done a number of things, I guess, in the way that we try and deliver audits. And if we go back a few years, we have, in some cases, used regional delivery centres. We don't use them for Gore District Council, but we use an outsourced delivery centre out of Hyderabad. And now we're using a little bit more AI. There's some really great tools that we're using, down to even, Copilot reading a contract or reading a valuation and then summarising that for us. So there's some really great tools out there that they will take hours out. The bit that I guess is changing is that delivery model and the cost of the AI. What we're probably messaging, and what I think is reality, is our IT costs of delivery are going up. So we actually need our hours delivery to come down in order to offset that. So over time, we should see those hours come down, you are right. Whether that then correlates with a reduction in cost, I'm a bit sceptical whether that will happen. But I think we've got a bit of time before we sort of see that play out in the next probably 2 or 3 years. Yeah.
Go ahead, Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Around technology and the scope of that, we have some new systems hopefully being implemented in the next 12 months. Does the scope cover the implementation of that, or is it more of a hindsight review of the technology? I guess what's the involvement in that process being rolled over and transitioned?
Yeah, so new system implementations are not uncommon, and typically, we wouldn't necessarily be looking at them as part of this year's audit. What we would typically sort of engage with Lornay's team on is what's the timing of that transition, because often it's good to do some audit work at the crossover date, for example. When we're picking up one set of data, we're moving it across, and we can get our IT guys in to come and make sure that process works effectively. So it's really a case of working with Lornay's team to figure out when's the most appropriate time for us to come and do that. What we don't want is we don't want to come in too far after the fact and then say, actually, we think there's a whole bunch of issues there that actually, while you might be able to remediate them, you've had a period of time where, we've got some concerns about how things have worked. So, in saying that, it's these system implementations they're not always easy, and we've got one at another council not far down the road that we're working through at the moment. So, I think the important part will be to work with Lornay's team around timing, process, and then making sure that we align our work off the back of that program.
I 100% agree with you being on site here. I'm remotely audited in these businesses, and the audit goes on for weeks with emails backwards and forwards and text messages and things, and it just wastes my time and wastes the auditor's time.
Yeah, I think it's just, and certainly I think the way we're seeing it is evolving quite quickly back to, we're fully in the office. We don't have any remote working, even when we're based in Dunedin, so we're 100% in the office, and we encourage our teams to be out talking to clients in the traditional way. So, that's how our guys learn as well. So.
All right, well, on the basis of not wasting anyone's time and delving into too much operational detail, I do want to just check with the team. Is there anything else members of the committee want to ask while we've got Mike in the room with us? I'll just make an observation for everyone's benefit then that the next time we're together, we'll be close to signing things off. We don't know if that'll be an in-person meeting or online. I appreciate you being here today in person, and wish you and the team all the best for an effective and efficient process. Thank you very much. All right, so we'll come back now to the paper. I'm picking this up on page 23 of the packet where you can see the recommendations to our committee. We've got 3 recommendations. I'm planning to take them as a job lot, if you like. To receive and note the proposed plan, thank you. Receive the audit engagement letter and endorsing that the Mayor signs that, and the proposal letter endorsing the Chief Executive to sign. So can I have a mover and a seconder? Thank you, Councillor McPhail and McDonald. Everyone in favour? That's carried. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful, safe trip back to Dunedin. All right, so thank you also to management for the pre-work that's probably going on already. And yeah, good luck with the process. So we've next got, what's our agenda item? Oh, the credit rating by Fitch. So I don't know anything more than was in our paper, so I'm going to hand over to management and ask for an update. Thank you.
Kia ora, and thank you, Madam Chair. Just to confirm that on Friday we got confirmation that we have maintained a AA- rating with Fitch. As you can see from the questionnaire that was attached to the paper, they ask quite a lot of information and they gain assurance from what management know about what's happening in our sector, what's happening for our organisation. This year we prepared a document to provide to them ahead of time so that they could be more efficient in their process. Normally the meeting is a couple of hours long and they come back to you with questions. This year the meeting lasted half an hour and they didn't have to come back with questions. So the work we did ahead of time to provide assurance that we know what our sector's doing and what our organisation is running like was very, very helpful. So in a time when councils are being downgraded, to maintain our AA- rating is good.
So hot off the press. Congratulations, everyone. It sounds like that's been both a lot of work but also a team effort on everything that's been going on in the past 12 months. So good outcome. I want to just invite members of the committee to offer questions, suggestions or observations to management.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The report that you gave back around the questions, is that something the committee is able to read over? I'd particularly like to understand around question 11, around rates capping and the impact on planning capability moving forward. I think that would be good for us to have sort of oversight of if possible, and not too much in that operation space.
Through Madam Chair, I'm happy to circulate it to the committee.
And can I just ask a question? Is that something that needs to stay, as a confidential paper? Should it be done that way?
Through you, Madam Chair, yes, absolutely. There is some information in there that is sensitive and we would rather, again, about future, about what things may look like. So it is confidential.
Any other members of the committee?
Not a question, but just a comment. Just wanted to really congratulate the organisation as a whole. I know there's a lot of criticism out there around, there's a huge amount of debt and we can't pay it back and the ship's sinking, but having a AA negative rating is really strong and positive, and would be up there with some of those top organisations and the way their financial management is. So really well done to everybody.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, so just, sorry.
I do have a question around the fiscal debt burden that's noted in this, but it also relates to annual plan that will be coming up later. Being that it's annual plan and in committee, would that be preferred to hold on to that till that point and ask that question?
All right, so I'd just like to see everybody looking cheerful. We actually had a bit of good news, and as the Mayor points out, so let's make sure the committee not only receives and notes the verbal update, but expresses our, as the Mayor suggested, our congratulations to the community and the organisation for that result, and looking forward to next year. Thanks, everybody. So I need a mover and a seconder for the formal thank you. Happy? You know who they are? And everybody in favour? Thank you, that's carried. All right, so that takes us then on to the reports for information. Now, just for the members of the public, and I didn't mention a special welcome to our other elected members who are here. Sorry for overlooking you earlier, I just had my vision out of the way. I do want to just explain, as I did last time, that reports of information are categorised as such because they're information that management are obliged to share with the committee, and we have an oversight, the opportunity to read them. If any member of the committee wants them discussed, they simply have to let me know in advance and we'll move them to a discussion item. So I haven't had any notification of that, and therefore all of these reports are noted for information. Now, I need to just check on one thing. So I did have information from management overnight that on the quarterly risk management update, which is a confidential paper, there was a suggestion that it could be, the front end of it could be moved to an information paper. So was that a request?
We can do that next time.
We'll do that next time? Okay. So that's something we'll talk about in preparation for the next meeting then. I just wasn't quite sure. So the agenda stays as it is. And we've first got an item to receive all of the reports for information. So I need a mover and a seconder for that, please. Councillor Smith and Cupid. Thank you. All in favour? Thank you, that's carried. So I do want to thank management for the thorough, tidy papers that we've been given, and stress that every member of the committee has had the opportunity to read them. Anything else that people want to cover off before we move to item 6.7? Just checking. Everyone happy? Okay, thank you. So I'll move on to item 6.7, please. And that is a recommendation that I move that the public be excluded from the next section of our meeting. So I just want to check, do I have a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Smith. All in favour? That's carried. All right. Thank you very much, Councillor Guidone. Did you want to speak to that?
Yeah, I just feel that the annual plan would have been better in public because it gives people prior notice to what changes there will be for the end of June. And by doing this, the only notice they'll get is the meeting notice for the end of June. So basically, not much time for people to think about what is actually happening in the annual plan.
Can I invite the Chief Executive to comment?
So staff have prepared the annual plan on the direction of council, which was discussed at a previous meeting, which there is a resolution for. I guess that's the first thing to comment. The second thing is that the responsibility of this committee in terms of the annual plan is it's an assurance piece. So what you are here to discuss today is, have we met our legal obligations and is the annual plan consistent with our financial strategy? So we're not here to debate what the rate rise is or anything else like that.
There could be a presumed risk if the voting went against it, so the risk lies with this committee. If you had councillors en masse voted against adopting the annual plan on the 30th of June.
So it's my understanding, and I am going to just preface my comments by saying, like other members of the committee, this is the first time I've done this in this role. So I do make sure I bow to those who've got experience. But we're not recommending adoption. I don't think that's our job. Our job is to do a process overview of the annual plan. Am I right about that? Yeah. So we don't adopt. We're not the decision maker.
But there could be a perceived risk with not being adopted on the 30th of June. So how do we deal with that as audit and risk?
So the risk would be to the whole council, not to this particular committee. So it's not a risk that this committee would. So we're not here. Our role is not to debate whether this plan is adopted.
Sorry, point of order, Madam Chair. We've actually moved in committee and there's still members of the public here, so.
It hasn't been passed. We haven't got the motion yet.
It was put, and then there was an objection. So, yes. Quite right. So let's take a pause. 2 minutes to, sorry, members of the public, if we can just ask you, thank you very much for your attendance. Thank you, John. My procedural error. Thank you very much to the Mayor for the correction. And I do want to make sure that the objection is recorded. I think that's all that's necessary for now. And look,